Welcome to the Mastermind Club, your ultimate gateway into the world of Bitcoin mining. Whether you're just starting out or looking to scale your operations, our vibrant community of like-minded enthusiasts is here to support you every step of the way. Join us for weekly sessions led by industry pros, where you'll exchange ideas, brainstorm strategies, and stay motivated on your mining journey. From heat management to site optimization, our monthly deep dives cover the technical know-how you need to succeed. And with access to our entire back catalog, you'll never miss a beat. But that's not all. Our members enjoy exclusive one-on-one sessions with veteran miners, plus direct access to special pre-sales and insider opportunities at Bitcoin Mining World. Ready to take your mining to the next level? Join the Mastermind Club today and secure your spot in the future of Bitcoin mining. Visit bitcoinminingworld.com or scan the QR code now. And now back to the show.
All right. Welcome everybody to today's Mastermind Club webinar. We're going to go deep. We're going to go deep on oil and gas and Bitcoin mining. And today we have Tyler Schmill and Greg White. They have been doing this a little bit. I think they have just a little bit of practical experience in the field. And so we'll learn a lot about them. So yeah, it's just going to be very practical, kind of like site evaluation walkthroughs. We're going to be grading sites in 5 different buckets. Okay, so like location, the operator, the type of gas, power generation and mining equipment and all that stuff. So we're going to show you after that a little tool called strandedgas.pro, which is really going to help you to evaluate this and just do it in a very repeatable process so that you can figure out how not to get screwed on your next oil and gas Bitcoin mining project. All right, so Tyler, if you're unmuted, why don't you just give us maybe one sentence on what you do in the whole off-grid mining kind of world.
So, one sentence word or phrase would be just to operate these machines in stranded and wasted gas situations in a place where you wouldn't normally run a Bitcoin mine, somewhere that's off the traditional grid interconnect path. You can't plug it into the wall. Most of these sites don't have traditional power. Maybe some of the North Dakota sites with better infrastructure have some basic site power. You might be able to get some lights. You might be able to plug in your router, but you're certainly not connecting 5 megawatts worth of Bitcoin miners on it. So our expertise is running off of odd places where gas has either been stranded or, it's just highly economical to run a generator and power your own equipment.
Right. Yeah. You would not think that, in the middle of nowhere on a dirty oil and gas field that, it would be a good spot for a Bitcoin mining data center, but, here we are. All right. So Greg, just to get you introduced here, what's one sentence on your background and what are you focused on?
Yeah. So I'm Greg. The one sentence background here is probably just trying to unstrand gas. Oil and gas operators are suffering a lot in the Permian Basin from the lack of infrastructure just because of how big Texas is. So there's a lot of oil that's trapped behind gas. And so we can help, consume the gas in a way that doesn't get them into trouble. And then they can keep the oil flowing. And that's good for everybody involved.
Right. Awesome. Yeah. Okay, guys. So here's the deal. We're going to call out red flags as we go, and we're going to keep it focused on how not to get wrecked. Okay. So, when you're trying to figure out how to do this whole Bitcoin mining and oil and gas thing, there's a lot of potential pitfalls and different ways to get screwed. And we're going to try to show you how not to get screwed. So we're going to call out the red flags and just kind of make sure that you guys can learn from Tyler and Greg's experience and maybe hopefully do it right or close to right the first time. Okay. So before we get started, I just want to let everybody know, here's a QR code to our Telegram group. It's a channel for Scott's Deals. It's all the latest equipment that we have for sale on Telegram. Every day we put new equipment in there. So you can find like, new or used ant miners or what's miners or anything that you might need to actually execute your Bitcoin mining project. Okay, now what else do we have here? There's a bigger QR code for you. Okay, as well, we have some L7s. These are script miners for sale in Canada. So if you're interested in that, we do have those right now for $1,300 a pop. You got to buy at least 5 of them though. They're ready to go, so they're palletized or boxed and just ready to ship. So if you have interest in that, reach out on Telegram. My handle is @OffredScott, and I'll introduce you to one of our business development guys. All right, so let's get right into it. So bucket 1 of the 5 we're going to talk about is location, right? So we'll just spend maybe like 5 to 7 minutes on this. I just have a few questions for you, and I guess either one of you, Greg or Tyler, can take these depending on how you want to do it. But so let's say I'm looking at a site on a map, and I'm wondering what are the first maybe 3 things that you might check before you get too excited about a location that you might have found. What do you think, Tyler?
So there's 2 kind of outliers here, right? Is it in the middle of town, which is always going to be a problem, or is it way out in the woods where it's going to take 2 hours to get there from your nearest town? So each one kind of comes with its own set of headaches. If you're way out in the sticks, likely the roads are pretty beat up. You don't have to deal so much with the noise as an issue. You can run air cooled, you can run whatever you want, but you will put a lot of miles on. You have a lot higher cost, especially if it's a smaller deployment. Like if you're going under a megawatt and you're 3 hours away from your nearest access point, then you may run into some issues and your efficiencies are going to come down quite a bit. It helps if you have scale. So depends on if you're looking at a location out in the middle of nowhere, see if there's a group of wells maybe that you can tie into. Stranded gas does tend to fall in those weird places. Sometimes you just get lucky and you'll find a good spot in the middle of a easy access. There's nobody around, it's just in a farmer's field somewhere, and that's great. But
right,
that's the golden charm, not the regular use.
Right. Size is also important in terms of like how much is available.
Yeah.
Because if you're too far away from town, it'll be hard to get the folks that you need to maintain the equipment. So like a lot of folks that are listening to this probably can maintain their own equipment to some extent, but the generators, everything else that's involved with using gas is highly specific skills and extremely expensive. And so if you're going to do something less than a megawatt, then that person is probably driving to several sites in an area, and you're paying for mostly for their driving at that small of a site. When you get up several megawatts, like you can start to pay for somebody to sit there all day, every day. But that's also part of location. Is just like, are you co-located with other, Bitcoin mining service providers that can actually service you?
Right. That's true. Yeah. I mean, that really ties into the next question of logistics, right? Like what kind of logistics issues might kill a project in real life? Maybe like roads, weather, permits, mobilization. I mean, I don't know. What do you guys think?
All of the above. I've had multiple sites where the roads are so bad that you can't get a truck in for 3 or 4 days. Depends on, does the operator maintain the roads? If they're getting trucks in and out, oil trucks, water trucks, that stuff, it causes some damage to the roadways, and you have to know if they're maintaining that field. If it's a county road, it's all stuff to take into consideration. And your first view of what that site looks like is usually going to be a pretty good indication of how that operator maintains their field. And I've had operators in the past that say, we don't maintain roads because we don't actually want people driving on them. So you get that, there is that side of things, right? And they'll actually charge you to maintain the road. They won't, it's not like, thank you for doing the road. It's like, if you fix the road, then I'm going to fine you for it.
Wow. Very interesting. Yeah. It's so interesting, like how these things actually work in real life, right? All the things that you don't really think about. Okay, well, interesting. So, what about something like connectivity? What's the minimum setup that you might need as far as, you know, um, maybe like connecting to the internet or whatever?
So I recommend, it doesn't matter what size of site you're on, I recommend a form of dual redundancy. We've had some really, really great luck with Starlink. You get your formal enterprise plan. It's like $600 for the equipment, a couple $100 a month for internet service, and then get an LTE card that you can tie in with that. Because if you have an off-grid operation and you lose internet, you are going to kill your generator every single time, because that load loss is instant. And that's something that, on grid, you can just turn it back up. And maybe at scale, if you've been a grid miner, you're familiar that you probably shouldn't just drop megawatts at a time. But with generators, they're a little more finicky.
Yeah. And then to the point earlier, somebody has to drive out usually a couple hours to then flip a switch to turn everything back on. Right. And so you're not only down for the time it takes, that's the time to get somebody out there. And if it's 2 a.m. and Starlink has an outage, right? Like, how likely are you going to get somebody,
I learned that lesson the hard way up in North Dakota, where it's 2 hours to every field, and you're trying to, operate your container from the house, run it through, and you turn on all your breakers at the same time, and it kills the generator. And you're just like, shit.
Now
I got to drive 2 hours and 2 hours back. There's a 4-hour round trip that I just made for myself.
Right. So, okay. So as far as connectivity, you said maybe Starlink, and then it sounds like a lot of people are doing maybe like a 3G or a 5G cellular network as well.
5G is, I guess it really just depends on your place. So like most of the different routers that you can use, I recommend like an outdoor heavy duty kind of router that can handle the weather elements. But as long as you've got, it depends on your situation. Like I'm in some places where Verizon is the only service you can get, and there's some places where AT&T is the only service you can get. So you kind of just have to, it's location specific, and it's always going to be that way. Definitely. So build your equipment in a way that you can handle multiple inputs.
Yeah. Okay. Also about location, this is, Tyler said, stay out of city limits. To be explicit about why, it's not just like regulation, it's also taxes. So when you're in a school district zone or a city limit, you'll often be subject to property taxes that are specific to the city, often like ad valorem taxes, things like that. And that's based on the value of your equipment during that year, which for a Bitcoin mine is extremely expensive. You're not operating with the largest margins. And so if you're paying a percent of the value of your whole project every year, that can go really steep. So it's always best. You'll see data centers actually do the same thing. They're like, hey, we want to stay outside of all these different zones so that we can just, be subject to the state as opposed to the state, the county, the city, everything.
Yeah, right.
But that comes with the exact trade-off of like, look, you don't have any connectivity, that's not brought with you.
Okay. I'll bring one more thing up before I forget, is always keep essential spare parts on site for your generators. Fuel filters, oil filters, and extra fluids to top off with. Like if you don't do that, you're in for a headache every single time.
Right. Good tip. Okay. So, still talking about location for our last question, maybe tell us a little bit about security and some safety basics, like fencing, gates, cameras, gas detection. What would you say are some of the non-negotiables there?
At a minimum, keep cameras inside and outside of your equipment. Depending on where you are, some places you can get away with pretty minimal security, as they're remote locations. You don't get a lot of foot traffic or anything. But I would dedicate 3 to 5% of your project on the development side to security alone, because if you think, like Greg said, when somebody backs up and steals your $1 million generator, you're going to be pissed.
Jeez. Right. Okay. So that, definitely talking about red flags, right? So if you can't really get great access to the site, like with roads, if the comms are no good, you don't have a good connectivity, or maybe if your safety and your security is not that great, well, then maybe that site is a no, right?
Yeah. But that's part of site visits. You gotta talk to the person, go out there, see the site, take pictures, because you're not going to remember everything that's going to come up when you're designing the site in the future. Drone shots are helpful. Overhead understanding of all that, because it'll be much easier for you to like draw an engineering plan that way than to point and grunt, based on memory.
Nice. Okay, so that's a good tip too. I actually just physically going out and visiting the site and maybe just not taking the person's word that it's good to go.
It's okay to tell them I'm not signing anything until I see the site. A lot of times people will do high pressure sales of like, hey, I want a commitment from you before we go forward. And it's like, look, we have to do a mutual, like getting comfortable. And so part of that will be, hey, here's my, bona fides where I know what I'm doing. And over here, you need to show me a bit more about this so that I can figure out if this is going to work, because, they can't expect you to go based on nothing and commit, and vice versa. You can't expect them to rely on you without any sort of proof, because if you go down, they have to stop operating most of the time. And they're losing all of their revenue, not just their revenue from the gas, but if they have to stop operating, that oil is like the most important thing to them. So it's really the biggest barrier to Bitcoin miners going off grid is honestly getting the trust of an operator, because of how important it is that you use it.
For sure. All right. Well, we're talking a little bit about the operators here already, but let's go into this second bucket, of the 5 that we're going to talk about here. Maybe talking about rights and contracts, handshake deals, and different potential landmines here. So, who actually has authority on the site? Who can sign for things and who can shut you down?
So one of the biggest problems I've had in the past is just poor operations or poor communication with an operator, because either you're just not a normal part of their operation, or the people that they staff don't really understand it either. So we've had multiple shutdowns where a pumper went out and they were just doing work on the well and didn't mention it to anybody, right? And we all know how hard those hard shutdowns are, so you want to minimize that as much as possible. And especially if you're doing any kind of hosting, which I kind of highly disincentivize you to do, because it's just an unreliable source of power sometimes, so it gets tricky. But if you're doing that, keep a nice open line of communication with your operator and make sure they know. And sometimes it's as easy as just putting a sign on the well that says, hey, call me if you're going to shut it down, please. And it's simple stuff like that. Like, just make this the little bit of extra effort to keep that chain open and know your pumpers, so you have good access to that, because that's pretty important.
Sounds like
the ground.
A little bit of education and awareness goes a long way there.
Absolutely.
So
there's a couple layers of leases as well. So one thing I've seen is like, the way mineral rights generally work, right? So why an oil rig is there, right? A whole well is set up is because like somebody owned the land. It's a rancher, it's a farmer, it's whoever, maybe a university or so on. They're leasing to the oil and gas operator for that, however many acres. And they have certain rights, but they don't have all the rights to do whatever they want there. They can't open up a cookie shop, whatever, right? They can only do the oil thing. And so one of the things that's also important to understand is like when the oil, operator turns around and gives you a lease or a sublease or whatever you want to call it, it's often a good idea to make sure that you're allowed to mine Bitcoin on the site. Because if you don't get explicit permission, you might come down the line and the rancher comes down and be like, why the hell is this loud ass thing on my property?
Right. So just be clear about your intentions and make sure that there's not going to be stuff that pops up like that. Yeah.
It's risky to knock on the door and expose yourself, but at the same time, like the certainty of knowing like, hey, this is a bad site because they literally don't want me here is often better. But when
Okay.
you're in a remote area, it's a little bit better. You're not really bugging anybody. It's also why you don't want to build near a city. Is like you're not going to have 1,000 neighbors. You might have 2, and that's a lot better. But it's important to understand the leasing is not like a lease is not a lease. Like you have certain rights, that are layered from each person that's kind of building on top of that same plot of land.
Yeah.
And that gets complicated. And so you want to make sure you have a gas purchase agreement, which is, you purchasing the gas from the operator, and then separately some sort of surface agreement, whether that's a separate sublease or it's part of the gas purchase agreement to like explicitly say, I have the right to access the land. I have the right to, operate a data center on this land. I have the right to make power on this land, and so on. And if they're not comfortable signing it, there's a good reason. There might be a good reason why. They want all of the benefit and none of the risk.
Okay. So that's the kind of paperwork that you can really use to prove, that you're not going to be walking into like a big legal mess.
Correct. Yeah. Because there's a lot of legality to this that is important. Like I hate paperwork as much as the next person, but
Right.
people are dealing with large
fuzzy when you have something you can reference.
Yes, and it's large amounts of money changing hands. So you want to make sure you want it papered. You don't want it handshake.
Okay, yeah. So it sounds like these kind of handshake deals, which might be kind of common, there are a lot of things that could go wrong, and you kind of outline some of them. But like, really, what does a proper structure look like?
It depends on what level you're operating. Usually, it's we're going to take gas at this price at this point, and everything behind where we take gas is the what am I saying? It's the responsibility of the operator. So like the operator has to provide the gas, they have to treat it, they have to get it to a quality that we can use in our generator. And they have to maintain the lines, make sure they're not freezing up, that they can deliver us gas reliably. And that if you can put in some clauses in there to help yourself from shutdown events and kind of incentivize that operator to keep the gas flowing, then that's great. But realistically, what we've learned in our experience is we're kind of an afterthought for a lot of these operators. Is unless the operation hinges on us being there, if we're like a side note for like a lot of flared gas mining, then it's you're just not a priority. So you need to get as much protection there, or at least keep the communication open. Like, hey, if you're going to shut down, please call us, right? That kind of stuff is important.
Okay. Yeah, and then as far as uptime, what kind of evidence do you need for uptime? Like, what would you kind of demand from the operator?
So, when was the well drilled, and any performance over the last 5 years, or if it's been shut in for 5 years or 10 years, what was the last year's worth of production data before you shut it in? Because sometimes that will give you a good indication of what it's looking like. And if you want to get into the engineering side of it, you're looking at, a couple thousand to a large number for deeper engineering studies on reservoir engineers and all that fun stuff. And maybe you get lucky and the operator's already done all of that for you. So It never hurts to ask.
It's a red flag if they won't share production history and they won't share gas quality analyses.
Okay.
So quality of the gas is critical.
Run away. Yeah. So another red flag is maybe the chain of command, right? If it's unclear who's in charge, and then like you're saying, if you don't have that runtime log and data to go off of, that's maybe not a good idea to work there.
A difference in 10% uptime can make or break your whole operation, right?
Yeah.
Also, ask how many wells your operator is running, right? Is this the only well in their portfolio? Like, do they have, are you working with Marathon Oil, who owns and operates 10,000 wells across the USA? Or is it Greg White Operating Company, who owns 3 wells in West Texas and sees them, once every 10 years?
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, if somebody's saying, hey, like, don't worry about the details, we'll figure it out later, you might want to run. And then also, if there's like really
run away,
vague kind of fuel rights, if you don't really know who owns what and what's going on, maybe not the best deal.
Yeah.
Okay. So So yeah, I guess, if a new entrant only really does one thing here, is somebody that's new to the industry, what's that one thing they should do when they're thinking really about the operator?
Uh, See what they say when you bring them contracts, right? Are they gonna legally review it? Are they gonna come back to you? Or are they just gonna sign it without looking? That's gonna tell you a lot about how they plan to operate. And then honestly, just look at the site. Like that's going to be the biggest thing that tells you about your operator. What kind of equipment? Does it look like everything was built in the 60s, or does it look like it's been well maintained? Do they have, and you can tell, right? Like, if it's newer equipment, you can see it's been painted recently. Um, the stainless steel is actually shiny. It's not all rusted over. Things are working. There's not oil spills all over the ground. Like, these are just like, if you need to put your feet on the ground and look at this, because that's your reference for your operator, is what the ground looks like at site.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's a good indicator, and it's hard to hide.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
so I would also say, like, you're gonna struggle if you've never done off-grid. You're going to struggle to get the trust of an operator. You might even struggle to get them on the phone. You might even struggle to find a phone number to call. And that's like, when you start out in this part of the business, like, you realize oil and gas operators, they have no incentive to like collect a bunch of interest from a bunch of small players.
Yep.
They can be fine not doing anything, and so they have a lot of the power to walk away.
yeah.
You will want to work with somebody like Tyler or I to like help you get your first site, even if it doesn't mean you own the whole thing full stack, but having the credentials of like, hey, I've operated off grid for a year at this scale, I can do it again, because I have the right partners, is very, very helpful, because you can't. It's hard to go from 0 to 1 and off grid. Like, you have to have come from oil and gas to get them to say yes to you.
Yeah.
And you're never going to do it all yourself anyway. Like, you're not going to be able to find, the generators, be able to maintain them yourself, find the miners, set them up, maintain them all yourself. Like, that is more than one human's ability to do. So you're going to need service partners anyway. And so once you have those service partners, you can repeat that over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And that's
some good advice for sure. Definitely. So we'll just cover it really quick. We don't have to get into the nuts and bolts too much, but this next bucket that we wanted to discuss was gas and the quality of gas. There's a lot to learn there, but we'll just kind of breeze through it. What are some numbers that you'd really require before you size anything? Like BTU, MCF, and variability and things like that.
We'll give you the tour later, but you can drop any gas analysis that you can get in a PDF form into our platform, and it will tell you the viability and what generators you should run on it. Realistically, somewhere between 950 to 1400 is where you want to be, and each generator burns at a different BTU content. 11 to 1200 with dry gas is like the sweet spot.
Okay.
And then pressures matter too. So
yeah, there's a lot to gas. It's a bunch of constraints basically, and what they change is if the gas is too cold, you're not going to get as much energy. If your gas is too hot, you're going to like chew up your turbines or your blades or your pistons or whatever is in the generator turbine. If you don't have mostly methane, it will what's called knock. Essentially, you have impurities that burn differently, and it will like chew up the balance of the engine, which causes a lot of problems. And so if you have too much propane, butane, everything other than methane in there, like, it still burns, but it'll break up your engine. So it's inadvisable to take on gas that's not pretty high methane number and pretty stable temperature. It's called the Wobe index. But these are things that like are a physics calculation that is a pain in the butt to like take the PDF they'll give you of the gas quality and copy out like 20 molar fraction numbers out into a calculator. And so we built something where it's like you just upload, uses AI to like pull it out and do the calculation. And so you need to derate your engine's performance based on the gas quality and location. So there's a thing called derating in generators is like, look, if there's less oxygen available because you're operating at like 10,000 feet, you're not going to get the same performance that you get at sea level, right? So you need to derate the performance from what's called nameplate performance. So when you get a generator, you'll look at it and say, this is 1,400 kilowatts. And it's like, okay, that's great. That's not what you're going to get almost ever. And so you need to do your derate analysis based on location, which will tell you elevation, weather, things like that. And then you need to know the gas quality to tell you like, hey, there's actually a bunch of nitrogen in this, which means like, for the same volume, you're just going to get less energy turning the crank. So you need a tool to help you with that. And we built something nice and easy for folks.
Interesting. Yeah. So it really sounds like, the composition of the gas is very important here.
Absolutely critical. Most deals I see fall through is because of gas quality, which is why you have to get it before you sign anything. It would be foolish to sign a GPA without knowing what's in the gas.
Right. Okay. And then in the tour of your software platform, you can tell us some more about, this data and where it should come from and whatnot. But I guess, just to finish this section off, for the minimum BTU and contaminants, what kind of ranges are workable?
I was just going to say, honestly, the one thing to look for is try to avoid H2S at all costs. If you absolutely have to run anything H2S, try to keep it below 10 parts per million or keep the operator in charge of killing it. Always, always, always wear gas detection. If you're working on a well has H2S, because it will kill you and it will destroy your engine. So try to keep it below 10 parts per million if you're going to actually use it as H2S.
Texas is the most, I would say, environmentally pragmatic place in the country. And they say legally it can't be above, what is it? Like even if you're not using it for anything, it can't be above 50 parts per million because it will literally kill you on site. It will chew up your lungs and you will die.
So this is where scrubbers and things would come into play?
So that's the thing. Is that if you have to treat the gas at the wellhead, you're likely not going to make any money doing this.
Okay.
Because there is equipment to strip out the propane. Propane is valuable. You can sell it on the open market for a good amount. In fact, oil and gas operators love wet gas. Wet gas is gas that has propane, butane, all that stuff, because it's much more valuable than methane per volume. But it chews up an engine, so you have to treat it. The equipment for that is not cheap. And then the logistics for selling it is obviously you have trucks that pull different stuff out, and take it to a market hundreds of miles away. And so at higher volumes, that can make sense. But at the wellhead, you're just not going to get much more than a megawatt often. And at that scale, you're just you're going to be paying mostly for the treatment, not for the gas.
Okay. Yeah, well, that's very interesting. So what you're talking about earlier with, just making sure that you're measuring stuff and getting data over time, but then also, is it really feasible, right? And is it valuable enough gas? Okay, so just to finish off this section about gas quality, I mean, have you ever seen a site that looked like maybe an awesome 5 megawatt site on paper, but in reality it kind of just collapsed?
I mean, the thing is, if you get all the paper, then it usually will work well. But getting all of the paper that will tell you all of the things is hard. Right. So getting the historical production, their reservoir analysis of future production, getting the gas quality analyses, getting their, their lease agreement in paper so you can make sure you can do what you need to do. Right. If you de-risk all that, you're often going to do pretty well, but there's always unexpected things at the wellhead. There's explosions, equipment failures, not often explosions. I shouldn't say that, but there are always things that happen.
It does happen.
Yeah, it can happen. And in fact, if you don't do your job well on your end with taking the gas, you could make that more likely.
Yes.
So it's really important to understand the wellhead is trying to go wrong at all times, and it takes an extreme amount of preparation and equipment to keep that from happening. But the most often thing I've seen, maybe Tyler, we both have the same horror stories, is labor. So having people actually show up to do the maintenance, to do the equipment swaps, to handle issues is often where most things go wrong.
Yeah, you don't, for equipment like this, it's not, so you're not working on just the container running into a transformer where your technician doesn't really need to be worried about the standard safety features that are just inherent with an oil and gas site. So there's a lot more background to this. And if you're not trained properly, realistically, everything out there from the gas point back to the wellhead will kill you if you're not trained and you don't know how to deal with it.
Yeah.
And most of it is really safe. It's all been built well. But if you don't know what you're doing, I mean, you can turn the wrong wrench and move the wrong bolt, and that bolt will come out at high pressure and go straight through your forehead. You know, it's just little stuff like that. So you got to be careful.
Right. Okay. Well, very interesting, and a little scary. Okay, so
just a warning, I don't want anybody losing an arm, you know.
Right. Yeah. And that's the point, right? Like a lot of people don't give you that natural sense of fear that you should carry in something like this, because it is a dangerous field if you're not properly trained. And it can be worked on very safely as long as you are trained.
Well, let's move on to the next bucket here, power generation. You know, we'll talk a little bit about uptime, downtime, and load swings. So my first question for you, why do most off-grid sites go down, and what's the real root cause?
I'll give you two reasons. One is you lost internet, and that killed your generator. Two is you've got fluid in your gas, and it clogged up your fuel filter. And those are the number one reasons that you're going to go down.
Yeah, because gas quality is not a constant, right?
Yeah.
Like there will be pockets of really crappy gas. And so it's important to understand that like your gas quality analysis will tell you, like on average, getting multiple samples helps a lot. Getting recent samples helps a lot, but you are going to have pockets of stuff that the generator does not want in there.
Okay.
But wells going down is very common, you know, for their own maintenance, for swapping out equipment, whatever. The best off-grid, well, I should say wellhead uptime I've ever seen is 95%. And that's like gold standard. Like everybody did it. You're at that limit, you're approaching the well's theoretical uptime. Yeah. Not like you're not doing anything wrong. You didn't have any downtime. It's just downtime from what's upstream of you.
Sure.
Yeah, but like for instance, if an entire rack of your miners goes offline, right, you're suddenly going to have a lot more energy coming from the generator than's being consumed. That'll trip off, right? So if you have miners trip off, then your generator trips off, then you literally have to go over and flip a switch, right?
Yeah.
And that's assuming it doesn't break anything, you know. And so there's a lot of things that cause downtime, and you know, having well-maintained equipment, having some remote connectivity, having redundancy really helps.
Okay, so you're talking about remote. So for remote monitoring, what kind of sensors and controls are like must-haves there?
Not a ton.
Yeah.
Something we're working on because it's so hard.
Yeah. As many as you can get, really. I mean, it's a tough thing. Like some generators have a natural software built in for monitoring, but you need to and Caterpillar will charge you like $5,000 a year to run their software. So like, it just depends, right? Like what do you really need and what can you get away with? Like for us, have a battery backup in your container and have a camera that just points at the generator, right? So like if you go down, you can look at the generator on your phone and say, hey, okay, it doesn't look like it exploded, so that's a bonus. Let me see if I can see the well. Does it look like the well is still doing something? Like, just see if you can knock off some of the simple stuff first. And then if your software, like if you've got software that'll read your engine data, then even better. But it's not a requirement. Yeah. Usually you need a physical restart.
Okay.
If you can get deeply enough into the hardware or firmware of the genset, you can get a lot of this information. It's just that nobody's built like a universal, like, hey, just plug this device in and it'll be like, that's a Waukesha, that's a Caterpillar, or whatever, and then pull the information out and throw it into a cloud environment for you to see from your phone. Yeah. Load and foreman. You need a load and foreman type thing, but for hardware other than miners. That's what's missing. It's
Okay.
honestly the biggest reason for downtime is that not only can I not see it, but I can't, I don't have like a Internet of Things switch I can flip like a light bulb in my home to like literally just physically toggle a switch, which is what I would do if I was a human on site.
Right.
So that is honestly like for the smaller sites that needs to be built.
Yeah.
Okay, good stuff. Yeah, let's skip ahead to bucket 5. So we're just respectful of everybody's time here, and that's going to be mining equipment. All right. So actually picking the miners, right? The ASICs. When do you prioritize efficiency versus reliability, and versus capex?
So I'm going to recommend this to anybody and everybody is spend the money on your generator, because that's going to be the core of your market for this business. Is buy the good generator, because that's going to be what pays your bills, and then use what's left to put your mining infrastructure together. If you can afford it, the water cooled miners are 480 volt or 3-phase, and the generators really love that. It's not a requirement. We've run tons of air cooled units, but make sure you've got something you can tune to 415.
Yeah, if you don't do that, the generator is out of phase with the miners.
Yes.
And so you'll have issues where like you'll have to like wire it up so that miners are triplets that can trip off together, so you don't have like a problem with the genset.
Phase imbalance is a big thing with generators. Right. That'll shut you down.
Yes.
Yeah,
there's a lot of ways to trip off.
That's very interesting. I've heard a lot of pros and cons of air cooled in like super dirty, dusty environments versus hydro cooled, and even immersion, right? Like I've heard some people like the idea of using immersion bath for cooling, but if it's going to be on an oil and gas field and you're moving it around frequently because your well's down and you got to go to another well, sloshing all that liquid might not be so great. But hydro definitely seems like an interesting option here. It sounds like
definitely the nice middle ground. You get a ton more efficiency than air cooled with a lot less downside, especially if it's direct to chip as opposed to like a water curtain. And that's really great, because you're going to damage your equipment a lot if you move it a lot. And immersion tanks, like everybody in the off-grid space has walked into a container and slipped a little bit because somebody had an accident with the immersion bath because it was messy,
The only other thing I'd say is if you're going to run a water-cooled solution, make sure you know your footprint first, because it's a more square foot based layout. Like it's not a cut and dry box transformer like you would have with an air-cooled solution or box generator. You have box generator and dry cooler, and sometimes that gets complicated. I mean, I know Giga makes some pretty good combo units. I think Fog Hashing makes a few, but most people want their stuff trailer mounted. You want it mobile because you're going to be moving it. Like no gas well is going to last forever. So be prepared that there's going to be some moving costs, and it's not really cheap. So if you can mount it on a trailer from the very beginning, I highly recommend it.
Highly recommend, because it's the difference of like $1,000 to unload and like $10,000 to unload.
Yeah, wow.
Like you have to bring a crane out to get it onto the back of a truck. Like your minimum $5,000 to $8,000, right?
Yeah.
Just to have the crane for 15 minutes. Like it's hilarious. You're like, wow, that's the quickest I ever spent $5,000.
Yeah.
They come out, they like move it, takes them 15 minutes, gone, right? And if you can trailer mount it, you don't even need to do that. You just hook it up to the truck and the truck drives off. But if you can even get it where like a front loader can get it, that's so much cheaper. But again, like that's a size thing, right? Like 20-foot containers, are fine. If you get to, the upstream hash gens that are like 40 feet long, like those ones are a little too heavy. You need to get a crane. But again, it's like there's so many advantages to that, including their software stack, that sometimes it's worth it. But if you can ideally get everything trailer mounted, you will save a crap ton on difficulty, because wells go down 10, 20, 30% a year in production. So you can't even if you see the production numbers, like it's not like, hey, this month you're going to have that forever, or even like after 2 years it's gone. It's like literally a curve down. So you have to make sure you have the equipment to pull off and move somewhere else to match what they're producing for you.
Yep.
Okay.
And so you're going to be moving much more than you think. It's not even like, oh, I'm here for 2 years and then I'm off. It's like I start here and then I'm taking stuff off every couple months.
So mobility really sounds like a very important
A big
factor.
benefit.
Yeah.
It's not a requirement. I mean, you can, like Greg said, you can pick things up, you can set them down, you can move them around. That's fine, but expect to pay a decent amount of money to do all of that because it's not cheap.
Yeah, Tyler, are you ever moving a container full of miners, or are you always unloading it?
I do.
Okay.
It depends on your containers. Some of them kind of allow for it. Some of them, I don't recommend it whatsoever. And it
Do you have
depends
to,
on the distance.
zip tie everything down to the rack, or if
Yeah, so like my favorite thing to do is, depending on what it is, if you can run a ratchet, like if you've got isolation plates and you can just ratchet strap across the front of each row, then that's great. They'll stay in place. Chicken wire across the whole rack actually works pretty well if you can zip tie it. And then if you don't have an isolation plate and you've got freedom on both sides of the rack, strip that thing down and put them on pallets and move it, and don't even try it.
Because it's gonna bounce.
Yeah, you're gonna lose it.
It sounds like
the potholes in the road are just insane.
It sounds like then the hydro ones that are actually rack mounted and screwed in there.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Ideal.
That's the ideal, right? You just drain the system of water. Everything's already,
Close it all up. Make sure you got caps on it. Send it down the road.
Yeah.
The other thing I would say is make sure your weight is fairly evenly distributed if you're going to move it down the road, because I've had times where we're like, oh, well, it's too heavy. We're going to strip out part of the container, and we take everything from like one side of the container out, and all your weight goes to the front or the back, and that's not really ideal for driving down the road. So make sure you have an even distribution.
Good tip.
Pull from the top, not the bottom.
Okay. Well, let's move on to another section here. And, I want to talk about, just understanding the different stages of an oil and gas operation, right? Because there's different types of wells, from what I understand, and different, stages of operation, right? Like maybe completely cemented over versus, orphaned or whatever. So, let's just kind of speed run through these project stages and we'll call out really what's viable and what's not. So, my first question would be, if someone hears about flare gas, what stage would they target first and why?
So realistically, we're going to live in the production phase. So you've got pre-engineering, engineering, design, drilling, completions, and then production. And then you've got the end stage, which is plug and abandon or orphan or any of those end stage of the wells. So we're going to live in everything past the completion phase. So pre-completion is mostly just construction, drilling, the testing of everything, and that's mostly your heavy, intense oil and gas roughnecks that are running the rigs and doing all the stuff. Like, there's no reason for us to be around any of that. Afterwards, in the completion phase, there's a little bit of pre-flow. You might have that first year of operation as the really high part of the bell curve for production, and it usually falls off. Like, production usually falls pretty far in the first year from when you first tap the well. So it's hard. Like, don't base your total power size off of that initial production rate, because likely you're going to have 50 to 60% reduction, and then it's just going to taper off and be a flat decline. But I guess, sorry, I'm getting stranded. I wouldn't focus on anything other than the production side, where you're actively running the wells, and the anything that has been abandoned or lost, which is like an operator went bankrupt, didn't do anything, or just walked away from the well, and it's just sitting there.
Okay. The well will change hands several times in the production phase. So what'll happen is, like, a bigger operator will drill it, and then after a couple of years, they'll sell it down the line to a smaller independent operator, and so on, until it's like a stripper well, which is where it's like not producing very much, but it's all already there. So you're just buying, the discounted value of the oil for the next.
Interesting.
However.
Okay.
But that's you want to understand that, because at the moment that it's being bought by the next person is a great time to get in there and say, hey, we're going to offtake the gas. But they're not often going to want to do a gas purchase agreement for longer than they expect to own the well. And so if you come in like 6 months before they plan to sell the well, like, your GPA will get canceled, or it'll be harder for them to sell the well because they have obligations for past the life of the.
Yeah, if you could get an operator to sign a GPA over 3 years, I would be shocked. Usually it's 12 months to 24 months.
Yeah, we've done it, but it's like literally you do it at the moment they buy it, and they plan to own it for longer than normal.
Okay, interesting. All right, so what stage here sounds tempting for like a newbie, but is usually a trap?
Orphan or stranded wells. So that's like without the proper data.
You're gambling.
Sometimes it'll be like, yeah, you can have it just for liability issues, but really the operator's playing hot potato and they want you to take on a falling knife. So you have to be careful in that. So do your due diligence on the well.
Okay. And then like what really changes when there's a pipeline, versus like a steady flare and all that?
So a pipeline is always going to be your best gas quality, because it has to be treated and prepped to get to that pipeline in the first place, or it will get rejected. So you do not, that's always going to be your best bet for like clean, dry gas.
Yeah.
And then after that,
you're not going to get 5 megawatts at the wellhead, right? Like if you want to go bigger, you have to go to a pipeline.
Yep.
Yeah.
Or at least a central gathering facility. So like some operators will run 15 wells and they'll run them all to one pad, and you can get a little bit better there. But yeah.
Interesting. All right. Well, that's awesome. That's going to conclude most of the questions I have for you guys. Now, after this demo that you're going to do, we'll wrap it up and we'll have some Q&A from the audience. So we'll just pop some comments on to the screen and we'll just see if we can answer some of these individual questions that everybody has.
Sure.
So, all right. So, Greg, you're going to share your screen?
Yes, I'll be.
All right. So this is a tool called strandedgas.pro that you guys have developed, right?
Yeah. And we basically built it because I was tired of doing stuff by hand. So, if you all can see my screen, this is a D-rate analysis, which essentially is you will pick a place on the map, right? Because this will tell you the altitude and the weather, which will affect how much you need to change the performance of your genset. And then you're going to upload a gas, analysis here. This will, pull out information about the gas and then give you an understanding of like how much should you derate the performance of your genset. This used to take me like 20 minutes to a half an hour to like get everything together because it's just so, so tedious. But an example here, let's see if it reloads. Yeah, this one's pretty bad. 26% derate. And that's usually because there's a ton of nitrogen, right? So it's a very cold gas because there's stuff that doesn't react, right? And that means you should run away from this screening, right? That's extreme derate. You want somewhere around 15 or less if you can. Mostly that'll be due to weather and altitude in Texas. In North Dakota, it's actually great. You don't get a lot of weather and altitude problems, but you have different gas quality. So this is a tool that you can find, in our suite of tools. You can just get a gas analysis or a full derate analysis for it. There's a bit of nuance to derating each genset, because each model kind of responds to stuff differently. But that's a basic understanding of how to derate. And this is how to understand the financials of a project. So there's as you can see, there's a crap ton of nuance to a project, right? Like derating is just one piece. Then you have to understand what do you think is going to happen to hash price? Because if you don't have an understanding of that, then you're not really planning, for what the mine is going to do, because that's going to change over time. You need to understand how much gas is going to be available, each month going out for the length of the project, and then what's the price of the gas. And so, we make it easy for people to model it with 10% down a year, or hey, they actually gave me a spreadsheet, so I'm just going to copy the column in the Excel spreadsheet and paste from clipboard, and it'll be like for all of the months that I'm trying to model. And same with price. Static price is common at the wellhead, but definitely not, when it comes to pipelines. It's much more tied to indexes. So anyway, you can model every piece of a project here and then understand, hey, what is the month-to-month income that I should expect from all this? And then, what will my balance sheet look like over time? This is important if you're raising debt. But yeah, there's a lot that goes into this to understand, how many gen sets you have to buy, how many containers will you need, how many miners will you need, and how many of those will be running every month, right? Like I'm going to need to sell 93 of these miners in month 3 based on this, right? You have to plan ahead so you're not just stuck there with a bunch of useless equipment. So anyway, this tool is, available to anybody. If you want to come try it, strandedgas.pro. You can come in and understand, like, hey, for a prospective site, here's what I can expect. Cool.
Awesome. Okay. We're going to do some questions and answers here. Thank you for that demo. That's pretty awesome. I could tell that you guys have definitely spent a lot of time on that, and it's probably near and dear to your heart. Okay. So we've had a few questions and comments here. Some of them, you might have already answered, but actually, Ron Watkins said there's a company called GoGo Tech, and I actually know a guy that introduced this site to GoGo Tech. They have an oil and gas site in Texas. What else do we have going on here? Wade says, "Oh, hey, maybe I've been doing it all wrong." So Wade, glad you came to the webinar today, and I hope you've learned some things. All right. Robert says, will you have a recording? Yes, it will be recorded. If you signed up and RSVP'd and actually showed up, you will get an email afterwards with the recording. And then if you're subscribed to some of our Telegram chats and whatnot, we'll actually create an article out of this that you can just recap and kind of redigest it in a different form. So like, text instead of video. All right. So Moises says, if someone needs, I will make notes. Okay, perfect. We got that covered. And then, Ron again says, what about consistency of gas flow? So you guys touched upon that a little bit. What were your thoughts again on the gas flow? Tyler or Greg?
Sorry. So for consistency, I guess if you're just talking about flow rate, pipeline, you're going to get a more consistent flow rate and you're going to have a more variable pricing schedule, and vice versa for a wellhead gas. You'll probably have a little bit less consistency due to problems with the well. You might get water come in. You might get the operator shuts you in to do some maintenance on another well. There could be a number of things that happen with consistency. It's not quite as guaranteed, but that every well is different too. So you might get one that runs for 5 years and never shuts down, and you might get one that shuts down 5 times a month. It's just do your research.
Okay. Well, thank you. Robert was saying there are depreciating calculations at both the federal and county levels. I can't remember what that's about. Did we discuss that at all?
So I didn't discuss it, but it is part of our modeling. We do model depreciation, but only for market value for sales of assets as they become, not useful on the project. When it comes to taxes, we are not trying to touch modeling for that because that is so complicated. Definitely talk to an accountant about depreciation when it comes to taxes. This is just meant to be about like how do you depreciate in order to know how much you're going to get in revenue from selling stuff as you go. Because if you don't sell as you go, and the production goes down, you're going to not make money.
Yeah. Okay. And then Kat says, avoid projects handling high H2S gas. You guys had mentioned that, right?
And call Kat for all of your permitting needs because she's the best in the business.
Oh, nice. All right. Good shout out to Kat there.
Absolutely.
And then Moises says, what type of gas is ideal? We kind of went through that, but just really quickly.
The one word is methane.
Look for high methane.
Yes.
Okay. And then Nathan Poole says, do you have a link to charts or calculators or something you could share here? Interesting. For determining the best types of gas. So what do you guys say?
I mean, the strandedgas.pro tool
Yeah.
is how you would do it. But again, like, it's not going to tell you what's ideal gas. It'll be given a gas you're actually looking at, how good is that for you? Because again, like, the rule of thumb here is methane is the only word you need to know.
Okay. So strandedgas.pro. I'm going to put it here in the comments. All right. There we go. Okay. And again, how often generators need maintenance and approximate costs?
That depends on your unit. We usually run 1,000-hour maintenance intervals. You can run more or less. If you talk to Blue Hills Dan, he'll tell you to run it till it drops. And I don't highly recommend that, but it just depends on what your pain tolerance is.
Yeah, I mean, your genset can last you 10, 15 years if you maintain it properly, and it's a very steady value. You're not going to lose a lot to depreciation because they're such great assets. But if you don't maintain them, they will crap out on you, and you will lose everything.
Rule of thumb for me has always been 40 days generator service, 5 years full overhaul on your generator. So full top end rebuild.
Okay.
And then depending on that, you should check your heads at least every other service. So
next question, Ahmad. When the generator trips or shuts down, a sudden voltage drop occurs, which can damage the miner's power supplies, the PSUs. What is the proper protection system required to prevent PSU failures during generator shutdown events? Because we got issues on grid when we get electricity shortage as well.
I tell you what, man, if you figure that out, you send me the answer. I mean, you could use a flywheel, but the cost of installing it is going to be like we're talking data center stuff. So you're probably going to spend more on the equipment than you would just having some spare PSUs.
Yeah. All right. So Jeff Reed says, well, gas production is a bell curve.
I mean, it's a short spike up, and then it's a slow decline. Yeah.
We start at the top of the bell.
Yeah.
We can only use the gas quality location in USA.
I don't think so. If that is the case, that's a bug, and I will fix it.
In your tool? Okay. All right.
Yeah, I think that the weather might only work in the US. And so you can do a gas quality, not a D-rate analysis, and just an understanding of the gas independent of that.
Okay. Well, we have an immersion cooling expert here. Rick says, given that multiple pumps are all moving towards a centralized battery collection station, could you not, one, capture a higher amount of methane for power generation in a single location, two, utilize an immersion cooling system to increase BTU for better oil, water, and gas separation while removing an electric heating option or dangerous open flame that is used today?
Yes and no. So you always want, if you can get the operator to pipe all your gas into the central location, then 100% you want to do that. On the other side of that, the heat that you generate from immersion or water cooling is not enough to do the separation for these oil and gas tanks. However, you could use it as a base. So they would still need to use their traditional flames, because you're talking 400, 500 degrees to get these line heaters and dehydrators and all the other separator equipment that functionally run. There's a lot of ways that you can integrate it, but it's just additional costs and additional engineering, and it depends on the operator that you're working with. Like you might get some take from some that are really into you just doing all sorts of cool stuff, and some that are like, don't touch that. That's not yours to mess with. So
makes sense. Okay. Well, great. So for anybody still on here, we got like 100 people viewing, I believe. That QR code in the top there will bring you to the off-grid and renewable energy Telegram group. So you can chat about, off-grid, whether it's solar or oil and gas, whatever. And if you want to follow up with Tyler and Greg, I think maybe you guys might even be in that group already. If not, You can scan that QR code with your phone and just get into that group. All right. So Tyler and Greg, where can people find you?
You can find me on Telegram, LinkedIn. Usually just search my name. I don't make it a secret.
Contact us at strandedgas.pro is probably the fastest way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate your time. And let's see if we have any more questions here. Ryan says, thanks for your knowledge. Moises says, what is the sweet spot in megawatt capacity for gas facilities?
I'm waiting for a meeting, but I will leave that question.
I would say 1.4 megawatts is your go-to for a lot of these generator sizes. So aim for about 1 megawatt mining equipment. Anything below 50 MCF or like 350 kW is going to be really hard to make it work, because you just won't make enough to maintain it unless you've got multiple sites. So you really need either a really, really lean operation, or like it's got to be in your backyard and you're doing all of it. So,
yeah. All right. Well, thanks again, Tyler, for that last question and for being here today. We learned a lot, and hopefully we can help people avoid some of these red flags and not get screwed on their very first oil and gas Bitcoin mining venture. Thank you.
Call us for anything you need. We're always happy to help.
Great. Take care.
All right. Bye.
Thank you for joining us in the Mastermind Club, your ultimate gateway into the world of Bitcoin mining. Whether you're just starting out or looking to scale your operations, our vibrant community of like-minded enthusiasts is here to support you every step of the way. Join us next week, where you'll exchange ideas, brainstorm strategies, and stay motivated on your mining journey. Thank you for joining us, and tune in next week.